Welcome back, everyone. In the last video, we styled our button, but now what we need to do is we need to style our cart dropdown. And I'm going to teach you a new concept that works with style components as well inside of your styling strategy. So first, let's create what we need for cart dropdown. We need to convert our cart dropdown.styles.sass over to a .jsx file. Inside of cart dropdown, one quick thing I want to note is that I've actually left out a very small feature. And that feature is that when you have no cart items, what we should show is that there is some kind of message that mentions we have no cart items. So for example, inside of cart items, what we could do is say that if cart items.length is existent, meaning that it's greater than 0. If a value of 0 evaluates to falsely, meaning that we have no cart items, then we show the empty message. But when there is cart items, then what we want to do is we just want to actually iterate through mapping the cart items to the corresponding cart item component, which is pretty much what we've had done up until this point. After this, then we need to show some kind of empty message. So this is where I would add somewhat of a span, and inside of the span, I would say your cart is empty. And that is pretty much all we need in order to demonstrate that we have an empty cart. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to style this span as well. So going back to our cart dropdown styles, let's talk about how we're going to convert this. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to, of course, style and make a style component. And to do that, we need to import in styled from style components. Once we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, I have this. What I want to export out is the cart dropdown container component, which is what this class pretty much reflects. And this is a styled div because it's the parent level component. I'm going to capture all of these different stylings that we have. And then what I'm going to do is I need to think about what I'm trying to also style here. These ones don't need any context anymore, meaning that they don't need to live inside of the cart dropdown container because the targeting is not specific anymore. We can now just create new components that reflect what they are because now we know will be scoped within our cart dropdown component thanks to style components. So here I can say export const empty message, which is actually that component that we had just made inside of our cart dropdown when it's empty. And we can just copy these in like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing for our cart items. So I'm going to say export const cart items. And here you can call them cart items container or cart items. I'm just going to call them cart items. And here I'm just going to make sure to bring over these same styles. And now what you've seen I've done is I've left this button for last because this button is specifically targeting any buttons inside of our component, meaning inside of our cart dropdown component. So what you could do is you could say for any button, I want this style. But let's say you wanted to target specifically our own button, not every button, but just our own custom button. The one that we made in our own component. How would you do this? Well, this is where we get a really powerful nesting ability and targeting selector ability inside of style components. As I showed you before, each of these components get custom class names when style components actually gets compiled. If you remember when we looked inside the inspector, we saw that each of these different components that we made using style components had a very unique randomly generated string for the class name. And on that class name is how these styles got attached, which is how we're able to make sure that in our finally compiled CSS, it doesn't actually conflict or clash. But this also means that style components actually knows what those new randomly generated class names will be. And the way that you actually target them inside of your styling for a style component is you can directly reference the style component that you've made itself. So for example, we have inside of this file other style components. As in cart items knows that what comes before it is empty message and cart dropdown container. But what this also means is that you can actually target these inside of your styling. So if inside of empty message, for some reason, you wanted to target your cart dropdown container, you can just do so like this. You can say, hey, I want to apply styling on any components that have this cart dropdown container component inside of it as a child of empty message. So this is where the nesting applies the same with selectors. When you have nested, like we have button here, we're only targeting buttons that live inside as a child of cart dropdown container. What you're saying with empty message is you're saying, hey, I want to target any cart dropdown container that is a child of empty message. So you can target any style component, and inside you can overwrite and make nested styles. So if you wanted to change the position, you can do so just like this. So what we want to do is we want to replace this button with our button component. But the thing to remember about our button component is that our button component renders a regular component that in turn determines which of these 3 style components to render. So in order to target all 3 of them, which could be conditionally rendered, we actually need to import all 3 of our style component buttons. So to do that, I'm just going to go up here. I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to make sure that we're going to the correct component. So we're going to go to button, and then from button, we need to go to button styles. So let's just make sure, like this. And now we can copy all 3 of these. And here we can say, okay, I want you to target base button. I want you to also target Google sign-in button. And then I want you to also target inverted button. So if any of these 3 components get nested inside of cart dropdown container, then apply these styles to them. And now that we've saved this, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we replace the correct components inside of our styling. So here, I know I don't need cart dropdown anymore. And I'm going to import in cart dropdown container. I'm going to import an empty message. And I'm also going to import in the cart items. And now to replace the correct components. So first, let's replace the div. Let's also replace the empty message. And now let's also replace cart items, which is also a div. And now it looks like I have an extra D there. So that's it. We've updated our code. Let's double check, make sure everything is working, including our new empty message. Now back inside our application, we actually see that I have a resolution error for getting this component. So it looks like what happened is I missed a slash. And now if we save this and we come back, we see that our application properly loads. We open up the cart dropdown, we see our empty cart message, and when I add, we see that everything still works and our button still works. So there we go. The key takeaway here is that you can target inside of your style components different other style components as selectors. So one important thing to note is that if you're going to use them inside of the same style file, just make sure that whichever component needs to target an earlier one comes after. Because if, for example, in cart dropdown container, you try to target empty message, well, what you'll actually end up seeing is that this variable will not exist at the point of this style component being initialized. So that's an important thing to note. But other than that, you have a lot of power in this ability to target your style components as well as nested styling selectors inside of your styles now. So with that, what I want you to do is try and style the next component, which is cart icon. Otherwise, we're going to do it and we're going to learn some more tips and tricks with style components.